Hello, this is Mijin. I'm going to show you a demonstration of a non-toxic intaglio technique using Plexi and water-soluble ink. This demonstration will allow you to avoid using some expensive materials such as copper or zinc for dry point. Also, no solvent is required for the whole process. We're going to use Plexi for this demo. You could also use metal plates like a copper or zinc, but those are expensive. So I sometimes prefer using cheaper materials like Plexi, acrylic, or Lexan, which is a polycarbonate plate. For today's demo, we're using Plexi, which is a plastic. You can get these from Home Depot or Lowe's or any similar store. These are much cheaper than metal plates. So, basically, we will be scratching the plate to make a texture which will hold the ink in the recessed area. Then, you can print it like you would do for a regular intaglio technique. One thing that's different is I'm also going to use gel medium and carborundum powder to make something like a sandpapered texture to get more variation in the values of the design. So you could get these kind of grays and not only through scratched lines and cross-hatching. So there are many ways you could scratch these plates. The simplest way to do it is with a box cutter or X-Acto knife and a ruler to get a straight line. Or you could even just scratch the plate freehand. You could also use an etching needle, which would give you more flexibility and control in terms of curved lines or straight lines by hand. I usually use this one for doing cross-hatching because I can hold it like a pencil and more easily draw my design. Another tool to try using is the scraper. When you use this, you might want to wrap something around this part so you don't cut yourself on the sharp part. You can use it like the needle at the tip, and you could use the edges on the side to scratch the broader area, like that. The other kind of tool to use is this kind of electric hand tool. When you use these other kind of tools, your hand might get tired pretty fast because you may be pushing pretty hard and scratching a lot on the plate. But electric tools are easier because you don't even need to push hard at all. I will show you two kinds of electric tools. One is just the regular Dremel, and the other is something you may have seen in a nail shop. They use this machine to file nails. I just changed the bit on mine to one that I think scratches the plate better. I just turn on the machine, and then when I'm doing this, I don't need to use any pressure. I just touch it to the plate, and the machine does all the work. Using the Dremel is pretty much the same. You can adjust the speed, then you just turn it on. Of course, a higher speed may engrave a little bit deeper, but to be honest, level 2 or 4 would be fine. The only thing you need to be careful about when you use this machine is because they vibrate. You need to hold the tool firmly. It's going to vibrate a lot, and then you might get a spotty image if you don't hold it firmly in place, unless of course that's how you want it to look. Now I'm going to move on to another technique, which is using this regular gel medium. And you could use matte or glossy. I usually prefer using glossy medium because it seems to stick better to the Plexi. And this is a carborundum powder. You can find it in the lithograph lab. We have 180 grit here today, and others in the litho lab. So grab whichever you prefer. The lower number will have coarser powder. So basically, you're mixing them into a clean bowl. Don't mix too much of the powder because the gel medium functions like a glue for this technique. So if you don't have a good mix, the powder will get washed out. This one is just a matte medium, and this one is the glossy medium. The reason I prefer using the glossy medium is because the matte medium sometimes also creates additional texture and could result in the plate holding more ink than I would like. If you have a large area that you want to cover, like over the entire plate, like this, then instead of scratching this large area, you could just use this powder instead of spending a few days scratching the entire plate. So this might save you a lot of time making the plate. Alright, so like I said, do not mix too much powder into the medium. If you want a really dark color on your print, just apply a thin coat. Here you can see it better on this. And then once this is dried, apply another coat to get more powder onto the plate. If you apply too much at once, the medium will not hold the powder onto the plate. And after you print once or twice, the powder will get washed out. Depending on how you apply it, you could also get this kind of brush mark. For example, you can see the difference in texture. Here in the center, I just scratched the plate, and then around here outside, I use this medium with the powder to get this wavy texture from the brush strokes. Just apply a nice thin layer going in the opposite direction once the coat is dried. When that one is dried, you can apply another coat on top of that. That would end up making the image much darker compared to these other spots. You could think of it like aqua tint. One thing you should be careful about when you do this process is, since you're adding texture onto the plate, you want to avoid raising the texture too high off the plate because that could become more difficult to ink when you print the plate. So don't apply it too thick like doing color graph. Today I'm going to print this plate because I don't want to make it more confusing with the multiple layers. Start by putting down some kind of material to grab your plate so it doesn't slide around because it's really light material. I'm going to use water-based ink. You can get this Charbonella Aqua Wash brand, or there is another brand called Aqua, AKUA, which may be easier to find. Both are easily washed with water, so after you're done, you can just clean up with the soap and water. Mix a little bit of magnesium into the ink. However, with the Charbonella, I don't really need to mix much of the mag into the ink. So, I have a few colors I prepared. Today I'm going to show some gradient printing instead of just one color. This way, you can get multiple colors from a single layer with one plate. I'm going to apply the green first. And I apply the ink just like I would do for a regular etching plate. I just wipe the ink on our green end of the plate like this. Then here in the middle, I will put some of the blue ink. If you want a more gradual, smooth gradient, you could also mix both of these colors and apply that between these two colors. But for today, I will just do it like this, so you can clearly see the different colors in the gradient. And then at the end, I will just put in some black. You might be wondering how many times you could use this kind of plate. I've used this plate for more than 30 prints, and I can start see the lines start to become a little bit lighter, but it doesn't really make a huge difference. How many times you could print these plates depends on how deep you scratch the plate. If you scratch deeper, you could make more prints from it. Now, once you've applied the ink, of course you have to take out the excess ink. If you've never done intaglio printing before, this part may seem odd. When we first apply ink, we put it all over the plate. And then, in this step, we are removing the excess ink, as well as pushing ink into the engraved area. Because the plate is so lightweight, it's really easy to get moved around when you're doing this. So, I always like to hold one side with a phone book page or some newsprint, and then work on the other side. You will need a different piece of tarlatan for each color. We have 3 colors here, so we need 3 pieces. Don't try to use one that already had black ink on it, because it's going to change your color. Alright, so like before, I hold one side and then push and take out the ink at the same time. This is a new piece of tarlatan, so it's barely taking any. A gradient could be tricky if you haven't done much printing before. When you use new Talaton like this, wash it first because it has a lot of starch on it. So wash it with warm water and then dry it before using it. So it becomes softer like these one that have been used before. And I'm going to clean more with the phone book later, so that's pretty good. Now for the blue one. It's good to make a nice little ball. Now, once you're in the darker color, you can go between these two colors to start blending them nicely. You can wipe it back and forth to smooth it out. I'm just going to rotate the plate because I'm right-handed and it's easier for me to do it on this side. And again, I'm blending a little between the colors, and that will help our gradient look nice. You could take more ink out with the Talaton, but sometimes because these are water-based ink that are a little bit softer than oil-based inks, so the Talaton could end up taking out more ink than you want. So I do about this much with the Talaton and clean up the remaining extra ink with some phone book pages. When you use Plexi, because these are transparent plates, you might get ink on the back of the plate. So when you're looking at it, you might be over wiping an area that looks like it has a lot of ink, but it may actually be on the other side of the plate. So always clean the table before you move on to the next step. Again, these are water-based inks, so they're really easy to clean. You could use water or simple green. Now we're going to clean with the phone book. Always start from the lightest color. Keep your hands flat. Mostly you're using your palm to rub. Or if you have small hands like me, you might need to keep your whole hands flat to use. So you could rub with just your palm or flatten your whole hands and do it like this. Go ahead and repeat the process for the blue part. The reason we use this kind of newsprint paper is because it takes out some extra grease and removes ink only from the surface, not from the engraved area. So you will see the lines start to show more clearly. If you like the plate tones like this, with the green all over like this, And then blue and black here. If you like the plate tone as it is, you could just stop here. If you want higher contrast with the background white and only show the engraved lines, you can always continue with more paper from phone book and remove as much as you want until it looks how you want. And you should always bevel the plate. Otherwise, the edges around the plexi will cut your paper when you print and could damage the blanket as well. So, please remember to bevel the edges of your plexi. You could use a file or a deburring tool. For plexi, I use a deburring tool and then file with a fine grain, then clean up the edges with a scraper sometimes. Always clean up the beveled edge because they tend to grab a lot of ink. You might want to use a little bit of simple green, not too much, and it may clean the edges easier. It's easier to get it all if you leave it on the edge of the table and just do it like this. So, I already put down the registration marks for the paper and the plate. And please don't put the blue tape outside of your plate because they will show up on your paper. As you can see, this plate keeps moving. So what I usually do is I take a little piece of tape and roll it up and put it on the back side of the plate. Because these plates are really light, they might move around on the press bed. So tape it and line it up with the registration mark to keep it from moving around. Push it down on the tape a little bit. Today I'm using German etching paper. You don't have to use this paper, but this is my favorite for Intaglio. I dampened the paper before this demo. I will share another demo about preparing paper later. You can use Leaves BFK, Arches, or Somerset. There are many types of paper that are good for Intaglio. Okay, I already set up the pressure, so I will just move the paper through nicely. Make sure the felt is not wrinkled. So this is what I got. Depending on how you wipe the plate and how damp your paper is, it's going to change your image a little bit. But as long as you don't make the paper too damp, the image should come out like you want. And of course, here I have all this nice bird texture which you get with dry point techniques.